One of the most important paintings in all of art history is entitled Las Meninas, and it was painted by Diego Velázquez, who was the court painter of King Philip IV in Spain. There are so many reasons why this painting is important. I wanted to discuss the painting a little bit with you, sort of the history of the work, and also why it's still significant centuries later. Some of the most important 20th century artists, including Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso, have done multiple versions of this painting. So here's a little bit of the history of why it's such a significant piece of art. The painting currently hangs in the Prado Museum in Madrid. It was painted in 1656, and it's a large oil-on canvas. It stands over 10 feet tall, and size doesn't always matter, but in this case it does. So bearing in mind that this was done in the 1600s, it was extremely ahead of its time. What is so interesting about this painting is the perspective in which it was painted. You've got several different things that are happening in this painting which are interesting. Number one, there is a self-portrait of the painter himself. You can see Velázquez standing off to one side, painting an enormous canvas. Number two, you've got the Infanta Margarita, who is the daughter of the king and queen, and she is standing right in the center of the painting. She's surrounded by several people, including her chambermaids. Number three, what you're seeing in the background of the painting is a small reflection in a mirror. Who's being reflected in that mirror? It's the king and queen of Spain, meaning that they are the subjects that are being painted, but we don't actually see them. And the fourth most important figure in this painting is standing in the background in the shadows. That is actually Don José Nieto, who was the queen's chamberlain. What's interesting about his pose is that you can tell that he's watching the subjects. He's kind of in the background, almost lurking around a little bit. And you can't really tell whether he's coming or going. So ultimately, what's so interesting about this painting is that it's not of the king and queen, but it's what's happening in the background. It's a painting of courtly life in the 1600s. This is fascinating. That really wasn't done before. From a technical standpoint, Velázquez was really unsurpassed. There was a reason, after all, that he was painting for the king and queen. For centuries, art historians, critics, artists, art collectors have debated what this painting is really about. There is one thing that we know for sure. It is considered one of the most significant artworks of all time. So I'd like to fast forward to the 20th century and talk about why this painting was significant to artists such as Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso. First thing, it really goes without mentioning that both Dali and Picasso were Spanish, as was Velázquez. Just like Velázquez, we have to understand that both Picasso and Salvador Dali were classically trained artists. A lot of people don't know that about Picasso in particular. They associate his works with really cubism and distorted figures, but at 10 and 12 years old, he was painting and drawing incredible classic images. See Pablo Picasso's early works, you really will respect him as an artist in a different vein than you may respect him for the works that he's more well known for. Dali, on the other hand, while he branched into surrealism, there was still a vein of classicism throughout his career. While there were distortions in the human figures that Dali would paint, you could still tell that he had his background in classicism. So who were Dali and Picasso studying when they were young? None other than Diego Velázquez. I can't imagine how many times these artists would have gone to see Las Meninas and revel in how avant-garde that painting was, especially for the time, but also the skill and the craftsmanship that went behind painting it. Just to show how influential this painting, Las Meninas, was to these two Spanish artists, Pablo Picasso painted 44 versions of the painting, which currently hang in the Picasso Museum in Barcelona. Salvador Dali believed that Diego Velázquez was one of the most important and influential painters in all of art history. Dali really considered Velázquez to be a genius. He put him in the same categories he put Michelangelo and Vermeer. So you see the themes of Las Meninas repeated many times over the decades in Salvador Dali's artworks. The painting Triumph of the Toreador by Salvador Dali is also an homage to the Las Meninas painting by Velázquez. What you see are really three main focal points of this painting. The first is the large staircases that are on either side. The second is the female figure at the top. That's actually Carmen, and she's surrounded by several other people. Notice Carmen's stance in this painting. She stands with arms extended upward and is wearing a large flowing gown. Her stance and her body, almost in the shape of a C, is very similar to the Alice in Wonderland theme that Salvador Dali repeated several times. But the third and probably most important focal point of this painting is actually a dark looming figure that is right in the center. It is a man standing in a doorway. Of course, that man is Don José Nieto, none other than the chamberlain to the queen in the Las Meninas painting by Diego Velázquez. Because Dalí returned to the theme of Las Meninas so frequently throughout his career, you see just how much he respected Diego Velázquez. Thank you so much. We hope you learned a little bit about Las Meninas, Diego Velázquez, and why this painting was so significant to contemporary artists such as Pablo Picasso and Salvador Dalí.